The story of Madeleine McCann. On May 3, 2007, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann vanished from her bed at a resort in Algarve, Portugal. What had been a fun-filled family vacation to the southern European country turned into every parent's worst nightmare. Police immediately began investigating the case, and a worldwide search for the little girl ensued. But days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and months turned to years. Now, more than a decade later, Madeleine's whereabouts still remain a mystery. A bombshell announcement made in June of 2020 might finally lead to the person responsible for the child's disappearance. Keep watching for details and to learn about all the twists and turns this case has seen. Madeleine McCann went missing on a family vacation. Since her disappearance, Madeleine's story has garnered worldwide interest. With a new Netflix documentary, The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, streaming on the platform, people the world over are still wondering what happened to this sweet little girl all those years ago. A slew of theories have emerged, including one surrounding a mysterious homeless teen with a British accent found living in Rome. Could it possibly be her? Your heart will break as you learn what detectives have to say now. The McCann family was seemingly perfect. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, met in 1993 and married in 1998. Madeleine was described as a long-awaited and longed-for little girl. Everyone that knew the family considered them to be picture perfect. In 2007, the family of 5 took a vacation to Portugal, but this seemingly innocent trip would change their lives forever in a way no one could have anticipated. Her parents had no idea they would come back as a family of 4. Or did they? They vacationed with a big group of friends. On April 28, 2007, the McCanns arrived in Portugal where they were staying at a Praia da Luz resort. The McCann family was traveling with 7 other friends and a total of 8 children. Kate and Jerry were both physicians, and the majority of the group also worked in medicine. The other families included Fiona and David Payne, Fiona's mother and their 2 children, Jane Tanner and Russell O'Brien and their 2 children, Matthew and Rachel Oldfield and their daughter as well. These friendships would be tested by what happened next, and perhaps destroyed. The group were old pals. Almost every night, the adults would all dine together around 8:30 at the tapas restaurant located at the resort where they were staying. The McCann family had been close with the Payne family in particular for years. Kate and Fiona had known each other since they worked together at the Leicester General Hospital Intensive Care Unit. The Paynes were responsible for introducing the McCanns to the other couples. Because of their work, Jerry, Russell, and Matthew had also known each other for years. The families were looking forward to a fun-filled, memorable weekend, but what ended up happening was absolutely beyond imagination. Praia da Luz is picturesque. Praia da Luz is a small town in Portugal. Praia da Luz means the beach of the light in Portuguese. The beach town was originally founded as a fishing settlement. Nowadays, it is largely a resort town, and the local economy has shifted as well from primarily fishing to tourism. The McCann family were certainly not the only UK residents to venture to the beautiful destination. It remains a common destination for others throughout Europe, including the UK, Ireland, France, and Germany. After Netflix released a documentary on her disappearance in March 2019, a woman watching the special recognized the man from the sketch. June 2020, investigators identify another German prisoner as a suspect. On June 3, 2020, a German prisoner who was in the immediate area where Madeleine disappeared in 2007 was named the focus of a Scotland Yard investigation. The man, now 43, had lived a transient lifestyle in a camper van in Portugal around the time of her vanishing and transferred ownership of the van, pictured, and another car the day after she went missing. German investigators made an appeal on German television and released photos of the vehicles, while a Scotland Yard spokesperson said, "Someone out there knows a lot more than they're letting on." He begged the person who had called in the tip to get back in touch with authorities. Details began to emerge about the new suspect, and authorities made a grim announcement. Officials say that Madeleine is likely dead. The latest suspect is another German prisoner who was convicted of numerous assaults against children. Although he has not yet been named, authorities revealed that he resided near Praia da Luz between 1995 and 2007. While there, he stole from local hotels and apartments and sold narcotics. Despite not finding a body, investigators said that they are treating Maddie's case as a suspected murder and may even know how the child had died. All we have ever wanted is to find her, uncover the truth, and bring those responsible to justice, her parents, Kate and Jerry, said in a statement thanking the police. Pictured here is a June 4, 2020 news conference about the investigation. A search is launched in July 2020. After the news conference, Portuguese police began searching for the body on the Algarve, about a 20-minute drive west of Praia da Luz, where Madeleine vanished. The police and search party also began checking all of the wells in the area. Authorities are still naming German prisoner Christian Bruckner as the prime suspect in the disappearance of the young girl in May 2007 and claim they have fundamental evidence to prove he could be responsible. However, several people claim to have seen Madeleine over the years. Keep watching to see exactly how the story unfolded. Apartment 5A, the scene of the crime. The McCanns arrived to Praia da Luz on Saturday, April 28, 2007 for a spring break trip. They planned to stay for 7 full nights. The town also has a very British concentration and is known by some as Little Britain. They rented an apartment through a British vacation company called Mark Warner, located at 5A Rua Drive, Agostinho da Silva, which was an apartment owned by a fellow Brit from Liverpool. The apartment was a bottom-floor apartment with 2 bedrooms. There were 5 other apartments in a series, and the other families on the trip were staying in the other apartments. Everything about this gorgeous complex seemed safe. One evening changed everything. On the morning of May 3, 2007, little Madeleine made a strange comment at breakfast. She asked her parents why they didn't come when she and her brother cried the previous night. Her mother brushed aside the comment, thinking nothing of it at the time, although she did note that there was a strange brown stain on Madeleine's pajama shirt. That night, the Tapas 7, the nickname given to the group of adults on the trip with the McCanns, went out for dinner at the nearby tapas restaurant at the resort. The McCanns left their children asleep in the apartment, tucked away. The doors were only able to be locked from the inside, so the McCann family left them unlocked. Coming up, new theories have emerged in little Madeleine's case. Sleeping soundly. As the adults of the trip laughed and dined at the nearby restaurant, their children slept soundly in their apartments. The adults of the trip, including the McCanns, regularly left the restaurant continuously throughout the night in order to check on the kids. At around 9:05 p.m., Jerry McCann checked on the kids and they were soundly asleep. He did, however, notice something strange. He remembered pulling the door almost all the way shut and now it was wide open. He must have thought his mind was playing tricks on him, so he again pushed the door till it was almost shut, leaving it only slightly ajar. Jerry then returned to the restaurant. A parent's worst nightmare. Around 9:30 p.m., Kate was going to check on the kids, but Matthew Oldfield was going to check on his own kids and said he would check in on the McCann children as well. He noticed that the door was wide open, but heard no noises, so he thought everything was fine and didn't look far enough to see if Madeleine was there. Kate later checked on her own around 10 p.m. She also noticed the kids' bedroom door was wide open. She tried to close the door, but she could feel a draft and saw that the bedroom window was open. It was then that she noticed Madeleine was gone. Her comfort blanket and her cuddle cat remained behind, but the precious girl was nowhere to be seen. Kate searched the apartment quickly, but could not find her and ran back to the restaurant screaming, "Madeleine's gone! Someone's taken her!" The search begins. Immediately after Madeleine was found to be missing, Jerry McCann sent his friend Matthew to the reception desk in order to call the police. The resort immediately began protocol for missing children, and at least 60 staff members and guests began searching into the early morning hours. Across the island, people were screaming her name, thinking perhaps the little girl had wandered off. Officers soon arrived on the scene and also brought patrol dogs and then search and rescue dogs to search for Madeleine in various natural and man-made features in the surrounding territory. Police also waited until the next morning to put up roadblocks around 10 a.m. Soon, British police also got involved, although it would remain a Portuguese operation. There have been many theories about what happened to Madeleine, but a new tip in 2020 holds promise for the young girl's parents. Keep watching for the latest. A strange sighting. Soon, as police began investigating the disappearance, it was revealed that there were two separate sightings that may have actually bared witness to Madeleine being taken. First, Jane Tanner, one of the other adults on the McCann trip, said she saw a man carrying a child that night. She said when she had gone to check on her own daughter around 9 p.m., she passed Madeleine's father, who was making his way back after the check he did at 9:05 p.m. Jerry McCann was seen chatting with a fellow vacationing Brit, but neither one of the men remember seeing Jane. Jane was later accused of making up the sighting entirely. She remained steadfast that she saw a man carrying a young child heading away from the apartments. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann premiered in March of 2019. The disappearance of 3-year-old Madeleine McCann shocked the nation and is now chronicled in a Netflix documentary. The 8-episode series is the first of its kind for Netflix and will include interviews with key figures and investigators. As Netflix looks to expand its offerings in the true crime genre, the company is dishing up a handful of new series. Netflix's series Making a Murderer details the mysterious case of Robert Durst and was very successful. Last year, Netflix released a controversial 1-part series about Amanda Knox, including interviews with Knox herself. While watching the documentary, a woman recognized the suspect in the footage. A woman recognized the man in the footage. Before the documentary series aired on Netflix, McCann's parents released in a statement, "We did not see and still do not see how this program will help the search for Madeleine. However, they might have been wrong." After watching the documentary, a woman who is a long-retired worker of the Praia da Luz resort where McCann went missing spoke up. She recognized the man in the grainy footage. Remaining anonymous for her protection, the woman reported to Portuguese authorities that the man was Martin Ney. His profile also matched the police sketch. Who is Martin Ney? Martin Ney was in the area when she disappeared. The former worker named a German man, Martin Ney, as the suspect in the footage. So who is he? Ney was working at a homeless shelter run by an evangelical church in the same vicinity as the resort where the McCanns were staying. The 49-year-old is now serving a life sentence in a German prison for the murder of 3 boys between 1992 and 2001. According to the documents which led to his sentence, Ney would sneak into the children's bedrooms while they slept, sedate them, and kidnap them. While in custody, Ney said something to another prisoner that has led investigators to name him the prime suspect in the 12-year-old case. What is the Pact of Silence? The Netflix documentary, The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, premiered on March 15, 2019. The 8-part series takes viewers on an emotional roller coaster detailing facts from the case, as well as theories as to what happened and where Madeleine is today. But one part of the documentary viewers can't overlook is the Pact of Silence. This is the title of Episode 3 and is inspired by a controversial article written by Portuguese journalists Margarida Davim and Felicia Cabrita. Within the article, the two insinuate that the McCanns and the friends they were vacationing with made an agreement to not talk about what happened on the night of May 3, 2007. A mistaken sighting. Jane said that the child was wearing light-colored pajamas that had a floral pattern on the cuff and legs, which was similar to what Madeleine had been wearing. She said the man was white with dark hair, around 5'7", and appeared to be in his late 30s. While she told the police, they did not pass on the info to the media until the end of May. In 2013, Scotland Yard said they identified who the mysterious man was. It turned out that Jane had seen a fellow Brit vacationer who was getting his own daughter from the creche of the resort. The girl's pajamas were similar to what Jane said and coincidentally close to what Madeleine was wearing as well. Yet, there had also been another sighting that night. The Smith sighting. That night, there was another sighting of a man carrying a child by an Irish couple named Martin and Mary Smith on holiday from Ireland. Around 10 p.m., the Smiths saw a man walking away from the direction of the apartment carrying a small child. They noted that the girl was around 3 or 4 years old, she had blonde hair and fair skin, had on light-colored pajamas and bare feet. They also noted the man looked uncomfortable carrying the little girl. They also said that the man looked to be in his mid-30s, was around 5'7" or 5'9", with a slim build and short brown hair. In 2013, Scotland Yard also said that this sighting seemed to be consistent with the time in which Madeleine was taken. However, the mysterious man was not the only suspect in the case. Robert Murat. Robert Murat is a British Portuguese man who was living in Praia da Luz at the time of Madeleine's disappearance. He was the first to be named a suspect after a journalist said he had been asking a lot of questions about the case. On May 15th, his home and cars were searched, as well as his pools drained and sniffing dogs brought on the site. By 2008, he was finally cleared of suspect status, as no evidence was found linking him to Madeleine. In 2008, he also received a large libel settlement after being accused of various atrocious crimes in reference to the case. In 2014, he was questioned again as part of Operation Grange, which was started by then Home Secretary Theresa May attempting to inquire into the disappearance. Next, a bombshell announcement by investigators reveals a new suspect in the case. A possible sighting on TV in 2014? In 2014, the Madeleine McCann case was brought back under the spotlight again after an image of a young girl bearing a strong resemblance to Maddie at a televised soccer game went viral. The image from the Europa League final match was shared by hundreds on social media who were hoping that this might lead investigators to the missing girl. However, others were quick to point out that the girl in the image appeared to be much younger than Maddie would have been at the time. In the end, police dismissed it as a lead. However, Madeleine's parents were grateful that people were still concerned for their daughter's whereabouts, with a source close to the family telling the New Zealand Herald, "What is encouraging is that it shows everyone is still looking for Madeleine. That will give her family great strength." Her parents claim innocence. Soon after the disappearance, the grieving parents, the McCanns themselves, had suspicion cast onto them, even though they had begun hiring their own investigators almost immediately after their daughter's disappearance. They were soon questioned by a German journalist if they had a part in the disappearance. By September of that year, they were officially named suspects. The McCanns started a fund in order to continue the search of Madeleine. They had many notable contributors, including Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. People speculated constantly against the McCanns in the media. They often focused on Kate and her appearance and demeanor. Ultimately, the McCanns sued multiple people, including Gonçalo Amaral, the former police inspector on the case, as well as several newspapers. The media obsessed over the parents. The media focused majorly on the McCanns and whether or not they had something to do with the disappearance of their daughter. The case is arguably one of the most highlighted in modern history and could be compared to the disappearance of famed pilot Charles Lindbergh's baby. Various media outlets have focused on the disappearance over the years, including pundits like Nancy Grace. Experts have also said that the case marks one of the first times that people had to face trial by media, particularly in the new age of social media, in which people can speculate wildly among each other across various platforms. Mistakes in the investigation. It was later revealed that tons of mistakes were made during the early investigation. Police at the border and at sea were not given proper notification of Madeleine for many hours. No door-to-door searches were made. Roadblocks weren't put up until the next morning. The road company called Euroscut, which monitors the local roads, said they weren't approached for information. Interpol didn't issue a global missing person alert for 5 days. Also, people who were staying at the resort were not interviewed, and the crime scene was not secured, nor were the surroundings directly outside of the apartment, and many people trampled the area, likely also destroying evidence. Afterthought. The McCanns now think that Madeleine's strange comments the morning she went missing about crying out the previous night may have suggested that someone entered the room that night. Her parents also noted that the resort staff had left a note in the message book about the adults of the trip reserving a spot at the restaurant and that the kids were asleep in the apartments. They now believe someone may have seen that note, thus alerting them that the kids were alone. Obviously, above all, the families likely regret leaving their children alone when it seems quite likely that someone was lying in wait for such a moment. In 2012, investigators released a time-lapsed image which would have shown Madeleine as a 9-year-old girl. Conspiracy theories. There have been dozens of conspiracy theories to spring up over little Madeleine McCann over the years. One such theory blames the McCanns for the accidental death of their daughter, which they covered up. Of course, the McCanns totally deny such a theory, calling it ridiculous. Other theories over the years include Madeleine was killed in a botched robbery that night. Others have said she simply wandered out that night looking for her parents, while others suggest far more sinister ideas, like Madeleine being sold into human trafficking. Most recently, the Portuguese police revealed that they are after a person of interest in her disappearance, a former worker at the Ocean Club resort where the disappearance took place. Hopefully, Madeleine is somewhere safe and alive and can be happily reunited with her family one day. Did she pass away in the apartment? While Madeleine's parents hold out hope that she is still alive and will one day be reunited with them, one investigator close to the case is convinced this will never happen. Moita Flores, who was a criminal investigator working with the Policia Judiciaria that initially led the search for Madeleine when she first disappeared, revealed in 2017 that he strongly believes the little girl never made it out of the apartment alive 10 years ago. He told The Sun magazine, "Maddie died in that apartment. I have no doubt." Is it her? A homeless English-speaking woman who was discovered in Rome in 2016 sparked speculation that she could be Madeleine McCann, discovered at last. The blonde woman carried no identification and had been sleeping on the streets for quite some time before she was discovered. She refused financial assistance from strangers who sought to discover her identity. Authorities notified Maddie's parents, who confirmed that the girl was not their daughter. A Swedish man named Tavo Jahojärvi took to Facebook to alert the public that the mystery woman is, in fact, his 21-year-old daughter, Embla Jahojärvi, who has Asperger's. He had not seen or heard from her since she left to study in Italy 6 months prior. McCann suing Portuguese detective? Kate and Jerry McCann have been at odds with Portuguese detective Gonçalo Amaral over his beliefs about the disappearance of their daughter Madeleine. He has written several books and even made a documentary that presumes to tell the truth about what happened to her. Amaral was the detective who was initially investigating Madeleine's disappearance back in 2007. The McCanns have labeled his claims as nonsense. Amaral believes that Madeleine was killed, probably accidentally, in the apartment and was never abducted. He further believes that the McCanns actually created the abduction as a distraction from her death. The McCanns have always denied all allegations of wrongdoing. The McCanns attempted to sue Amaral various times over both his books and his documentary. However, they lost their case in the Portuguese Supreme Court. Did Portuguese police frame McCanns? Before Gonçalo Amaral wrote his first book about the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, he already had a contentious relationship with her parents. It was this that allegedly contributed to his resignation as the chief inspector. He had also been involved in police brutality accusations in another missing child case. A little girl named Joana Cipriano disappeared 1 month after Madeleine, very close to the town of Praia de Luz. Although a body was not found, her mother and uncle later confessed to the killing. However, her mother later said she had been badly beaten by police and was forced to confess. The police stated she had thrown herself down the stairs at the police station, and that is why she was bruised. What to gain by police framing? Kate McCann's mother, Susan Healy, has said that a similar thing that has happened with Joana Cipriano's family is also happening to her daughter and son-in-law. Susan spoke to the Daily Mail saying, "This is a setup. I know why this is happening. The police are trying to frame them for murder. If there is any evidence to implicate Kate and Jerry in any way, then it has been planted." Some have stated that this also has been done in order to distract away from the issue of missing children in the area, particularly because Praia de Luz is known as a tourist hotspot and the way all locals make their money. Thus, if people stop going because of child abduction, people in the area would suffer monetarily. Most believed theory. An esteemed profiler, investigator, and author of the book Disappearance of Madeleine McCann, Pat Brown has said she believes that Scotland Yard messed up the investigation of Madeleine's disappearance. She further has stated that the only plausible belief in the entire situation is that Madeleine is dead. She theorizes that the evidence does not support an abduction, particularly based on the amount of time the crime was supposed to have taken place, as well as the evidence at the scene of the crime. She, much like Portuguese investigator Gonçalo Amaral, believes that Madeleine accidentally died and then her death was covered up. Accidental overdose? Pat Brown told news.com.au, "The evidence supports the theory of an accident occurring through neglect and possible medication." Others have alleged similar things, such as a French newspaper, shortly after her disappearance, alleged that Madeleine died from an accidental overdose of sleeping medication. Wilhelm Batut, who works as an investigative journalist for François, said Portuguese police believed that the evidence indicates that Madeleine had taken sleeping pills in large quantities. Pat Brown also asserted in her statements that she believes it's unlikely a trafficker would abduct a British blonde child, as they know it would generate major attention into the case. Pat Brown also says they are spending money looking in the wrong direction of this case when that money could go towards children who are actually missing. Casey Anthony. If the rumors of the McCanns drugging their daughter, accidentally causing her death, and then disposing of her body are true, this would not be the only high-profile case with a similar modus operandi. Casey Anthony was charged with murder in the death of her daughter, whom she originally claimed was missing. Casey was subsequently found not guilty after an internationally publicized murder case. Many have asserted that Casey was regularly drugging her daughter Kaylee in order to go out and party with friends, and one night the chloroform she was using was too much for the little girl's body and she died. Since being found not guilty, Casey has stayed widely out of the public eye until 2017 when she granted a bizarre interview with the Associated Press. Maddie's DNA found. After Madeleine's disappearance, 2 British sniffer dogs arrived to Portugal. The dogs were specifically trained to aid in cases such as this. One was trained to sniff out human blood, and the other was trained to sniff out dead bodies. While both dogs were taken to multiple locations, they both alerted in apartment 5A, the place the McCanns had been staying. The cadaver dog also gave an alert in a car used by the McCanns. While DNA samples were apparently inconclusive, the Portuguese police told various journalists that they matched Madeleine 100%. The police theorized that Madeleine had been accidentally killed by a sedative overdose, and then the parents faked her abduction. The police apparently later told Kate and Jerry McCann that if Kate admitted Madeleine died in apartment 5A, she would only be given a 2-year sentence and her husband would not be charged. She refused. Questionable spending of money. After Madeleine's disappearance, her parents, Kate and Jerry, started a fund in her name with the sole goal of finding their young daughter. Donations poured in from around the world, and they were even given grants from the British government. Some have criticized their use of the funds as they have allegedly used them to sue various people, including former investigator turned author Gonçalo Amaral, for libel. However, the McCanns have defended themselves in their use of the money. They also state that if the fund were to run out, they would continue funding the search for Madeleine themselves the best way they can. Did Madeleine wander off? Another theory that has arisen after Madeleine's disappearance is that she possibly wandered off on her own after being left by herself and her young siblings. Many criticized the McCanns for leaving their children alone in an apartment while they went to have dinner and drink at the local restaurant. When Kate found her daughter missing, she came into the apartment through the back door. The front door remained locked. The kids' bedroom door was also wide open. If young Madeleine had woken up and could not find her parents, it would not be odd for the young girl to leave the apartment to search for them. Child trafficking theories. Another far more sinister theory is that Madeleine was kidnapped by child traffickers. Witnesses have alleged that men had recently been in the area and were collecting money for orphanages. People viewed these men suspiciously. Some have theorized that because they knew Madeleine and the other children would be left alone at night, as per a note left at the front desk of the resort, they knew she might be an easily acquired target. Other witnesses have claimed to see Madeleine in many other countries since her abduction, including such places as Morocco, Spain, England, France, and Portugal. The McCanns refused to answer questions. When the McCanns were originally submitted for questioning, Kate McCann refused to answer 40-some-odd questions during an 11-hour interrogation. The questions included everything from describing the surroundings within the apartment, to if she asked for a priest, to if she, Kate herself, could sleep, or if Madeleine was taking any medications. Kate only answered one question. The question was as follows: "Are you aware that in not answering the questions you are jeopardizing the investigation, which seeks to discover what happened to your daughter?" Kate replied, "Yes, if that's what the investigation thinks." Of course, it's also worth mentioning that at the time, Kate and Jerry were also under the impression that the Portuguese government was attempting to frame them for their daughter's disappearance. Pamela Fenn. Pamela Fenn was an elderly woman who lived in the apartment right above apartment 5A where the McCann family was staying. As was common for the area, Pamela was also an expat from England. She apparently told people that the day before Maddie was reported missing, she could hear the young girl crying loudly for around an hour. She was apparently so worried about it that she even spoke to friends asking for advice on what she should do and whether she should call the police. Conspiracy theorists have alleged that perhaps Pamela took Maddie because she felt as though she wasn't being cared for. However, Pamela has since passed away, so the truth about this particular theory is not likely to ever be known. Brenda Leyland. Brenda Leyland was a British woman who took it upon herself to try to investigate the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. She also came to the forefront of media attention after her Twitter account was revealed to be among a dossier of people who were regularly tweeting out disparaging and harassing tweets on Kate and Gerry McCann. While there was apparently no reasoning for a criminal inquest, Sky News in England began pushing the topic and even approached Brenda outside of her home about why she was sending out so many tweets. Less than 2 days later, Brenda Leyland committed suicide. Her adult son later said she had been totally destroyed by what happened as she valued her reputation greatly. Trial by media. Many have said that Brenda Leyland was the victim of trial by media. Others have criticized her actions as being akin to internet troll and that she simply could not handle her actions being exposed. Interestingly, her vitriol toward the McCanns is akin to what ultimately caused her own undoing. The media has had a complete field day with Kate and Gerry since the disappearance of their daughter Madeleine. Kate especially has been the focus of the media and has been painted as being cold or unfeeling due to the way she conducted herself in the public eye without much care as to people dealing with traumatic situations differently. The 10-year anniversary came and went. May 2017 marked 10 years since the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. The little girl would now be a teenager. While there has been a constant stream of conspiracy theories over the years, there has been very little actual evidence revealed in the case. Sadly, many believe that much of the evidence was destroyed and the investigations were subsequently botched. Her parents, Kate and Gerry, remain steadfast in one day finding their daughter and bringing her home. Hopefully, people will eventually stop focusing on so much conspiracy theories and instead focus on actually finding out what happened to Madeleine. Hope remains for Maddie. One senior investigator on the Madeleine McCann case believes that not only is the missing child alive, but that she's being kept hidden somewhere in plain sight. Detective Dave Edgar strongly suspects that the girl, who would now be 14, is being held captive and is not even aware that people are searching for her. Edgar, who is hired by the McCanns for 3 years of the investigation, remains hopeful that the upcoming 10-year anniversary of Maddie's disappearance could cause someone to come forward with new information. In my experience, they, perpetrators, always confide in someone else for whatever reason, and that person needs to come forward and speak to the authorities. I would suggest that 10 years, while it seems a long time, would not feel like that to that person with information. What happened on that night would still be fresh in their mind. We have seen in a number of cases recently where people have come forward and given evidence of events which took place many years ago, Edgar relayed to Daily Express. The search for Madeleine is extended. On September 7, 2017, it was announced that the search for Madeleine McCann is being extended. According to Sky News, the Scotland Yard search for the little girl is now being extended 3 weeks before its funding was due to run out. Detectives asked the Home Office for additional funds and time to explore a final theory about her disappearance. Although it has yet to be approved, as long as ministers believe the theory is credible and there is a chance of finding Madeleine, the funds and extension should be granted. It is speculated that the detectives will be asking for a large sum to keep a team of 3 or 4 on a watching brief. Police are looking for a new person of interest. In October 2017, it was announced that the police are hunting a person of significance in the case of Madeleine McCann's disappearance. Although no additional information has been released about the new suspect, the person of interest is considered critical to the case. This news came just weeks after the British police were granted an additional £154,000 to continue the investigation. In total, more than £11 million has been spent on the investigation during the last decade. The case's funding was set to expire in September 2017 but was refunded. Former Met Police Detective Colin Sutton said, "One would imagine, if they are getting more money, they feel there's still some viable line of inquiry that needs investigating."